Hello everyone, in today's video we will have a look at movement actions with the Action Pack 1 asset for Game Creator. A lot of these actions will be absolutely great to use for platformers, making it easy to move objects in the scene. Action Pack 1 covers movement options, text options as well as randomization options, with the latter being a great way to create random actions in combination with the behavior module. This is something we'll cover in the next video. In order to do this, we will need Unity, Game Creator, and the Action 1 Pack asset. Before we start, I would like to of course thank all of my Patreon supporters for the absolutely amazing support. So before diving in, I'm going to show what we're actually doing in this scene. So right here we have the floating action for these cubes here. Now in this scene, I'm just using them for cubes to go up and down in a weird spiral movement. But obviously this is something you could use really well for water, for example. So I think I remember seeing some people ask how they would make a boat move up and down, and this basically comes down to animation work. And there's nothing wrong with animation work, but this might be slightly easier. All you have to do is set up an action and you can have it, infinitely loop in a floating type rotation movement. So pretty cool. That's something that I would definitely recommend using for water. Now here we have a movement platform, and once we step on that platform we will have these objects in front of me move as well. So basically creating a stairs, and I'm not really sure how well you can see that right now with the material I chose to use here, but basically this creates a stairs. These first two objects will actually shake while I'm standing on them and then drop. Now obviously nothing happens here in my scene because there's no death effects, but it's something you could easily use. Well, you see that in a lot of platformers. The rock you're standing on will shake and then will drop to the ground. So another really cool and nice easy thing to use for a lot of action platformer elements. And there we go. Now this is something a lot of people who have played Skyrim would be familiar with. The ability to just pretty much drag any object in the world, move it around and drag it where you want. So that's pretty cool for those who want to create an RPG type environment and play a bit of Skyrim basically. This is pretty similar, but it allows you to rotate. So think, for example, a puzzle with each side having a image on it and you need to match them. Again, something you'd see in games like Skyrim. So pretty cool. A lot of movement action here, and I'm going to show you how to set all of this up. It's actually really easy because the actions do most of the work for us. So here we have our static scene, so I'll hit play just to demonstrate, show you I'm not cheating here. So really static scene, nothing is going on here, just a bunch of blocks and objects. Now I'm not going to go through how to create blocks, it's just random blocks here, nothing truly exciting, just a bunch of block meshes, and on top I have a random normal sphere mesh and another block. So what we're going to do here is, first off, I'll show you how to make these objects actually interactable. Now one important thing is that you have to make sure that your camera has the main camera tag. So main camera tag. Without this, the system won't recognize these actions, so just make sure you have that as a tag on the main camera you're using. Now on these we need to add rigid bodies, something you'd have to do for every physics type action really, and they need to have a collider. Now by default they will have a collider, but just to make sure you do that. And let's change this to 0.1, 0.1. There we go. Now I'm going to go to the sphere, You know what? I'm actually going to make this easier. Copy component, sphere, base component as new. There we go. So both of these are set up. That's all you really need to do in order to have this work. So, you know, something you'd recognize from any physics-based actions. What we're going to do is I'm going to add a on start here. On start trigger. There we go. So let's add a trigger on start, and what do we want to happen? So in our actions, we're going to go to action pack 1, and we're going to use drag with mouse. There we go. Going to drag in that sphere and press allow dragging. Now here you get to decide which button you're going to use. I'm going to use the middle button as I'm not using it for anything else. I'm not using focus with melee, for example, which by default uses this, but I'm using you know, the combat module in order to target. So my middle mouse button is not used for anything, so I'm going to use that just to make it slightly easier. You don't have to do that. It can be something you already use for something else, but just makes it easier. Now we can put some restrictions to this, and I definitely say for, you know, some puzzle based activity that might definitely be something really good to use. But right now I don't need any restrictions. We're just going to keep it all as is. Now we have the option to use drag object to rotate, which basically is the same. So let's drag that cube, but it allows for rotations, and you can change the speed and allows for rotations in the field. So let's just put 20 here, same mouse button, and that's it. That's all we need to do. Now the first one, so the ability to actually drag objects in the world space, that's something that is definitely useful for, well, anyone creating an RPG where you actually want to be able to interact with objects in the world. Now in Skyrim, this is the best example I can come up with. This is something you could use with, well, pretty much any object in the world, really. So you hold a, can't remember which button, but on a controller you hold the stick, and you could just drag anything in the world space, which is pretty cool. So we'll have that. Now on start, we want these blocks to do something as well. So I'm going to use the float here. I'm going to add another set of actions, and we're going to add float an object. Now can't remember which block this is, so that's 2 to 5 basically. I have so many blocks in here. So 2 to 5, so let's grab the first one. So let's grab 2, and well, just gonna keep it all like this. Now this is the important part. You need to have an interval in which this repeats, so you set an amount of time, and then you choose the amount of loops it will do before it stops, or if you want to have it infinite. Now I want this to be an infinite action, so it will just endlessly repeat. I'm going to keep these values as is. I'm not, well, let's just see what happens, and we'll keep it like that. Now obviously this is something that is really cool, the float, for water or, well, any liquid type of interactions. So if you want to have boats in the water that, you know, seem to actually move with the waves. So pretty cool. I'm going to duplicate all these actions just to make it slightly easier. So we have 3. So let's grab in cube 3, cube 4, and cube 5. And there we go. So going to hit play just to make sure it all works. And we only see the first one moving. Now this makes a lot of sense because I forgot to actually add these actions. So let's add them here. So we have 4, 5, and 6. Let's give this another go. Now as you can see, this is something really modest, so it doesn't move all that much, just a modest movement action. So let's exaggerate that a tiny bit. So let's do 0.1 and 0.1 and 0.1. I'm not really sure what effect this will have, but let's give it a go. And as you can see, you can change all of the values, so every axis value can be changed. So the speed in which it happens and the amplitude, so how far it actually goes. So we'll try this again and we'll see that already moves a lot more and it nicely goes down. So this is definitely something that is really nice to use for, well, like I said, water, physics, anything you can imagine really. So that's pretty cool, but the most important part is moving platforms. Now, moving platforms require two things. So here we have our move object. I just called it move. I'm going to duplicate it, make it a child, rename it trigger. Going to remove all of the scripts, the meshes, just so we have, well, let's actually make a box collider first. So let's add a box collider. There we go. It's a trigger, and I'm going to remove everything else. Now the reason I do this, create a duplicate, is just to make sure that our trigger is in the exact same spot. So just find it a bit easier to do. So there we go, we have a trigger. Now this will need two trigger components. So it will need a on-player enter and a on-player exit. Now this one is important. If you don't have an on-player exit, this will mess up. So I'll show you why in a bit. So we're going to add some actions. Just going to keep it all in here. It's not going to be something elaborate, so we can just keep it in here. There we go. Now we're going to add a small weight here. So just to make sure it doesn't start moving straight away, so just to give us some time, so 0.5 seconds is enough. And I can't recall where we had to do this. So we have a option here, where are you, object, transform, there we go. So we're going to change parent, the parent of our character, while we're on this object, because we want to make sure that our character moves along with the object. So let me drag in our, so player, change parent, new parent, and this is our move. And just going to do position here. No, not even, we're not going to change anything, we're just going to keep it as is. So this is important. If you don't do this, the object will move and the player will not move, so he'll just fall down. So you retain all of your freedom, so you can still move, nothing will change in that regard, but we just want to make sure you move with the platform. Now let's add that movement. So move object by distance. I think this is Z, right? Yeah, that's Z, perfect. And it's going to move 6. Now, reason I'm going to use 6 here is I have, with ProGrids, I have this turned on, so I just want to make sure it aligns with these blocks. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we're aligned with these blocks. So I'm going to use 6. It will take 6 seconds as well. I'm not really sure it's seconds, but you know, the higher, the slower it goes, the lower, the faster it goes. So it's the time to arrive. Now I had so we drag that in. Now we need to make sure that once we exit our trigger, we clear the parent. So really simple once we jump on. Now, yeah, that's it actually. I was thinking of what else to do, but no, this is most likely going to be it. So let's just see and make sure this works. No, it doesn't really work. That's interesting. So we have our move, we have our trigger, and what is exactly going on here? Oh, well, it would help if we drag this in. Apologies for that. Let's give this another go. So I'm going to keep this open just so you can see what actually happens here. So we're stepping on and we're moving. So we change the parent and the player is moving along. Now, if we don't do this, the platform is the only thing that moves and the player won't move with it. Now, I'm going to show you again why we need to make sure that on-player exit is on there. So I'm going to jump on here and I'm going to fall off. Now, if you don't have this one turned on, basically, you will keep moving with the platform because it would still be your parent. So that's why we need to make sure that we clear parent the moment we leave that trigger. So quite important little detail there. So yeah, pretty cool. Now we need these platforms to move as well. I'm going to do that once we actually jump on the platform. You can do this whenever you want. And I just realized that that's why I should actually have a normal action component. So going to do that anyway. So let's just create a normal action component. So we have our action 7 here, and I'm going to duplicate, copy paste all of these. Should have done that from the start, but I simply forgot, to be honest. And there we go. So same values. Oh, forgot to change parent. And there we go. So we have the same thing set up, and let's remove this one. We can keep this one. There's nothing else we're going to do once we exit. Now, I'm going to add a couple of extra actions here. So at the same time as this one moves, I want these others to move as well, but at different values because they are going to form a stairs. Now, as you can see, this is all flat. There's no height difference. The reason I'm showing it like this is, imagine this actually being a normal floor. So not even sticking out, and you can have floor tiles actually create a stairs. Something that looks pretty cool. So let's add a couple of actions here. How many are there actually? There's 4 of them. Cool. So let's add 4 in total. So we need 1 more, because these were the first actions. So in here we're going to do a move as well. So move object by distance, and this time we're going to move in the Y direction. So the first one will be 3.2. That's simply because I know that's what matches in order for stairs. But obviously if you're doing something like this yourself, you need to see what height would match the moving platform. So yeah, it's a bit cheating because I already know, but going to use the same amount of time as it takes this platform, so we'll be a bit slow simply because this is going rather slow, but I just think it's nicer if this actually perfectly matches each other. Now you have the option to do return object as well, so it would actually go back down. That's something pretty cool if you want to make it a more timed platform action, so they don't have a lot of time. But in order to do that, I'm going to show you something else, how we can have the platform shaking and actually drop. So I think that's a bit cooler than simply having it move a bit. Now I have absolutely no idea which block this is. That's pillar 2. Let's just double check. 2 to 5. Perfect. So we're going to drag in 2. Now, going to copy this action because we're doing pretty much the same. And this one will be 3.4, so just a bit higher because, like I mentioned before, it needs to create a stairs. And we're going to drag in pillar 3, copy it again, pillar 4, this will be 3.6, and the last one will be pillar 5 and 3.8, and there we go. Now this will form a stairs. This is at the height of 4, so this is 4 high from the ground up, so it will literally form a perfect stairs until this platform. Now, yeah, all of this is set perfectly. Cool. So that's nice. You can complicate things a bit. So for example, if you'd fall off, that the platforms would go back down again. Something I definitely recommend if you're actually going for the platformer route. But, you know, that's easy to do. I'm just going to keep it like this for now. I want to actually make it more interesting once we actually get on here. So this is pillar 2. So just like before, in order to create that trigger, I'm going to duplicate this one and drag it on there. I'm going to add a box collider. And we're going to remove all these components again. There we go. So we have, let's rename this to trigger actually. Trigger, there we go. Perfect. Now it's a bit high, but yeah, let's just keep it like this. Cool. So let's add a trigger component to this as well. So this will be another on player enter. And we'll have a action here. So the first action will be shake. So shake an object. Going to drag in that pillar. And I'm going to, well, let's just change this first. So these values by default are really low. It's actually slightly going to be more realistic. I'm just going to keep it at 0.02. At least we feel it shakes a bit, but you'll see our character with his foot IK is actually bending his knees a bit, which is actually a pretty cool effect. I'm going to do a loop interval of 0.1. And we're not going to do infinite loop, so this will not infinitely shake. And we're adding a wait time of 2 seconds, and then we are going to move the object down again. Now we moved it up by this one by 3.2, so we're going to move it down by 3.2. There we go. Drag in that pillar again. So yeah, conservative value, nothing truly exciting here. And I want this to happen with the first 2 objects, simply to make it a bit harder. You could obviously do it with all, you know, the entire stair platform we just created, but I'm just going to keep it like this. Pretty sure we can simply, no, let's just duplicate it just to be sure. So this is 2 seconds. We have a interval of 0.2. So 0.1, sorry, so times 20 will form 2. So at the same time as the 2 seconds, it will stop shaking and it will just drop down. Now let's make this even 0.5, so pretty fast, and it will drop. Now I'm going to duplicate this one, so we have the same, and we're just going to drag in pillar 3 here, pillar 3, there we go, and we need to make sure this one drops 0.4 because it went up a bit higher. There we go. Now let's make sure we can add that action as well. And there you have it. So this will happen once we enter this collider. So let's give this a try and see if I did not mess up. So this still forms the stairs. Absolutely perfect. Going to walk on, we see it shake and it drops. Now as you can see, it stopped shaking the moment it dropped as well. So that's why, if you're gonna do something like this, it's quite important you match these. Now this would make a lot more sense with actual platforms instead of entire blocks, but you get the gist of it. Now let's make sure this is actually going to be enough time, and we're going to run over real quick. And there we go. So maybe it's even too much time, but yeah, you can adjust that. Now we're on the other side, we finally got there, and we have these objects that we set up in the beginning. So drag to rotate, so really nice, we can rotate these, and we can drag this along. And there we go, well, it has a rigid body, so it'll interact, pretty cool. So yeah, that's it, really simple and easy to set up. I think these are some really cool actions in order to create platform elements in games, which is something, a lot of games will have to some degree anyway. If you have an entire platformer, you'll have a lot more of that. So while the interval here should have been a bit smoother with these floating objects, but that's fine. You get the point. So this is pretty cool. Now there's a lot more actions in this action pack, but they are basically all grouped together. So we have all of these move actions here for objects. We have randomize actions. I think this is going to be one of the most exciting features for anyone creating a RPG or open world game. And we have all of these text options. So this is something we'll go through in another video, not to make it too long, but I'm personally really looking forward to be using these. So we can actually be randomizing actions, and I think for any form type of NPC, this is going to be really, really nice, just to make sure they're not literally repeating the same actions. So if you die, you know exactly how to approach a character. So think randomizing their patrol area by having 3 different patrol areas. That way it's a bit harder to predict for the player where the enemies are going to be, and they can't just simply, die and repeat the same steps. So yeah, really looking forward to using this one. So that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please hit like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.